For months, Barcelona looked like a team caught between brilliance and breakdown. They could overwhelm opponents one week and unravel the next. Heavy defeats, late collapses in Europe, and defensive instability created a growing belief that this was a talented but unreliable side, exciting to watch but incapable of sustaining control. The criticism felt familiar. The system was labeled reckless. The press was questioned. The high defensive line was blamed.
It's his job to figure it out, and I don't think anybody's expecting him to play in some sort of low block on the edge of their own box. Even against the weakest teams, Girona, Alaves, and others in La Liga, they've been taken apart.
Once again, Barcelona were described as entertaining rather than serious contenders, but while the attention remained fixed on the mistakes, something important was happening beneath the surface. Barcelona responded to early setbacks instead of collapsing. They beat strong opponents without losing control of matches. They survived chaotic games through superior firepower. They dismantled deep defensive blocks with patience and volume. Over the last few weeks, they have won 5 consecutive matches across all competitions, scoring freely while showing a level of control that had been missing earlier in the season. The performances tell the same story. Rafinha has become the engine of the attack, relentless in his movement and pressure. Lamine Yamal has evolved from a prodigy into a decisive creator, bending defensive structures with every touch. Ferran Torres remains a reference point in the box. And at the heart of it all, Pedri is redefining Barcelona's midfield, dictating tempo, breaking lines, and controlling matches with a calm authority that turns pressure into opportunity. Even defenders are stepping forward to influence games. This is not a return to nostalgia. It is not a romantic version of the past. It is a modern Barcelona, faster, more direct, and more resilient. A team that can dominate with the ball, survive without it, and adapt to the demands of different matches. And that is why this run feels different. The question is no longer whether Barcelona are improving. The question is what happens when a team with this much attacking threat finally learns how to control risk without losing identity. At first glance, this season looked familiar for Barcelona. Too familiar. The football was brave, the ideas were aggressive, but the results told a more uncomfortable story. Barcelona could look electric one week, then completely exposed the next. They lost 4-1 to Sevilla in October, a scoreline that wasn't unlucky or exaggerated. Sevilla didn't fluke that win. They played through Barcelona with ease, found space behind the back line, and punished every hesitation. A few days earlier in Europe, Paris Saint-Germain waited patiently and struck late, turning one moment of hesitation into a decisive blow. From the outside, it looked simple. People pointed to the high line. They called it reckless. They called it naive. And visually, they weren't wrong. When Barcelona lost the ball, the space behind them looked massive. One pass, one run, one mistake, and suddenly the defenders were sprinting back toward their own goal, exposed and outnumbered. But that explanation was incomplete, because the high line was never acting alone. The real problem was what happened before the ball reached the defense. Early in the season, Barcelona's press was inconsistent, not absent, inconsistent. The forwards pressed in moments, not sequences. The midfield stepped up late. The distances between the lines stretched just enough to give opponents time. And in modern football, time is everything. When teams had time on the ball, Barcelona's structure fell apart. The defenders were left defending space instead of players, not because they forgot how to defend, but because they were asked to do too much, too often, with no margin for error. That's why the goals Barcelona conceded early in the season all looked the same: a calm pass out wide, a switch of play, a run time behind the back line, a finish from close range. It wasn't chaos, it was repetition, and injuries made it worse. Key players rotated in and out of the lineup, breaking rhythm and chemistry. Pressing is not about effort alone, it's about timing, trust, and coordination. Lose one piece and the whole chain weakens. Lose several and the system stops protecting itself. That's why Barcelona could dominate possession, create chances, and still look fragile. They were playing high-risk football without full control of the risk. Yet even in this phase, the warning signs were already there. Their passes allowed per defensive action were good on paper, but misleading. The press existed, yet it wasn't synchronized. Forwards jumped early. Midfielders stepped late. That half-second gap was enough for teams to break the line. That's where Flick intervened. Instead of demanding constant pressure, Barcelona began pressing selectively. The goal was no longer to win the ball immediately every time, but to delay first, then trap. You could see it in how opponents were forced wide more often and how central progression became harder. The defensive line dropped slightly, but the bigger change was spacing. The distance between Barcelona's front line and back line shrank. That compactness meant fewer passes played cleanly between the lines and fewer runs attacking open grass. The effect showed up in the numbers. Barcelona's expected goals against per match dropped noticeably compared to the opening weeks of the season. They were still conceding shots, but from worse angles and longer distances. The clear one-on-ones that defined September almost disappeared, and when teams did break through, Barcelona were better prepared. The back four were no longer left defending 40 meters of space alone. Fullbacks stepped in earlier, midfielders recovered quicker, defenders could delay instead of panic. This is why the pattern of goals changed. Barcelona began winning the ball back higher up the pitch, often within 5 to 7 seconds of losing it. That shortened recovery time meant opponents rarely settled into possession phases. Matches started to feel suffocating again, and crucially, this adjustment didn't kill Barcelona's attack. They remained one of the highest scoring teams in the league. They continued creating over 2 expected goals per match during this run. The difference was that now they could control games even when the tempo slowed. This is where belief turns into evidence, because form can lie, momentum can lie, even good football can lie. But winning 5 straight matches across competitions against different styles under different types of pressure, that's when the conversation changes. And that's exactly what Barcelona have done. Over their last 5 games in all competitions, Barcelona have gone 5 wins from 5, scoring 15 goals and conceding 6. Not perfect, not spotless, but controlled, and most importantly, repeatable. It started quietly against Alaves. Barcelona conceded inside the first minute, the kind of moment that used to derail them. Heads drop, structure breaks, panic creeps in. This time nothing changed. They kept the ball, they kept their shape, and within 7 minutes, Lamine Yamal had already pulled them level. By halftime, Barcelona were ahead. By full time, they'd won 3-1 with nearly 70% possession and twice as many shots as their opponent. That was the first signal. They no longer lose control when something goes wrong. A few days later came the real test. Atletico Madrid, away from comfort, against a team built to punish mistakes. Barcelona went behind again, and again they responded. They didn't chase blindly. They didn't stretch themselves. They moved Atletico deeper and deeper until the pressure told. Goals from Rafinha, Dani Olmo, and Ferran Torres sealed a 3-1 win, with Barcelona controlling nearly 60% of the ball and limiting Atletico to very little sustained threat. That wasn't flair, that was authority. Then came the game that reminded everyone this team can still be chaotic when it wants to be. Away at Real Betis, Barcelona turned the match into a shootout and still came out on top. 5 goals scored, including a Ferran Torres hat trick in a 5-3 win that showed another side of this team. Even in a wild game, Barcelona still had more of the ball, created more chances, and simply had more weapons. Betis landed punches. Barcelona landed knockouts. That's not luck, that's depth. Europe followed. In the Champions League against Eintracht Frankfurt, Barcelona went behind again. Different stadium, different pressure, same response. They stayed calm, they pushed higher, and the goals didn't even come from the forwards this time. Jules Koundé, a defender, scored twice to turn the game around and secure a 2-1 win. That matters, because it shows Barcelona don't need everything to go right to win European matches anymore. They can win through set pieces, through second balls, through defenders stepping up when needed. And then came today, Osasuna, a deep block, 10 men behind the ball, no space, no rhythm offered. Barcelona didn't force it. They finished the match with 80% possession, took 24 shots, and conceded just 3. They waited, they squeezed, they recycled attacks again and again until Osasuna finally cracked. 2 Rafinha goals late on sealed a 2-0 win that never felt in danger. That wasn't chaos, that was patience. So when you zoom out, this streak tells a clear story. Barcelona can now come from behind without panic, beat top teams with control, win chaotic games with firepower, handle Europe with resilience, break low blocks with patience. 5 matches, 5 different problems, 5 solutions. That's when a team stops being in form and starts becoming reliable. And once a team reaches that stage, opponents stop asking how good they are and start asking how do we survive them. This is the point where Barcelona stop looking like a team with good form and start looking like a team with a system that produces damage on demand. Because the output is no longer coming from one hero. In the league alone, Barcelona have already scored 49 goals. That's not a hot streak. That's sustained chance creation week after week across different match states and different lineups. And in the Champions League, they've scored 14 more. even with the tactical risks and the learning curves that come with facing elite opponents. Now here's what makes that number scary. The production is spread across the squad. Let's start with Rafinha because he's the tempo setter. In La Liga, he already has 4 goals and 3 assists in just 9 appearances. But the bigger point is how he changes the way Barcelona attack. When Rafinha is on the pitch, Barcelona don't just circulate the ball, they stretch you. He's constantly making those diagonal, painful runs that force a backline to turn. And when defenders turn, they stop being organized. They start reacting. That's how low blocks crack, not by passing forever, but by making defenders run while they're trying to stay compact. Then there's Lamine Yamal, and this is where the whole attack becomes unfair. Yamal has 7 assists already in the league, with 6 goals on top, and the assist number is the giveaway. He's not just dribbling for vibes, he's the team's main creator. Every match turns into the same dilemma for defenders. Do you double him and leave someone else free, or do you gamble 1v1 and hope you survive? Most teams double him, and that's exactly what Barcelona wants. Because when 2 defenders shift toward Yamal, the weak side opens, and Rafinha is usually the one attacking it. That partnership is not just chemistry, it's geometry. One player bends the shape, the other punishes the gap. Now add Marcus Rashford to that equation. Rashford's league goal count is modest at 2, but his real impact is in creation, 6 assists already. That's elite output for a player who was originally meant to rotate. He gives Barcelona a different type of threat. Power carries, direct runs, transition speed. Even when the game is slow, Rashford forces defenders to respect depth, which buys space for midfielders to breathe. And speaking of finishing, Barcelona don't just create, they convert. Ferran Torres has 11 league goals already. That's massive in a team where goals are shared, because it means Barcelona can survive matches where the buildup isn't perfect. Ferran is the type of scorer who benefits from chaos. Second balls, cutbacks, scrappy moments in the box, and flicks Barcelona create plenty of those. Then there's Robert Lewandowski with 8 league goals and 12 appearances. He remains the reference point, occupy both center backs, win the duels, and punish teams that defend deep for 70 minutes. Barcelona need that kind of striker because La Liga doesn't give you space for free, and the secondary weapons are producing too. Dani Olmo has 4 league goals, Fermin Lopez has 4 league goals, and both add assists as well, meaning it's not just the front line creating the end product. Midfield runners are contributing consistently. That's how title-winning attacks look, when the goals don't disappear the moment one forward gets injured. So when people ask why Barcelona are becoming scary again, the simplest answer is this: you can't solve them anymore. If you commit numbers to Yamal, Rafinha, and Rashford, punish the space. If you lock the wings, Lewandowski and Ferran finish centrally. If you survive the starters, the midfield runners still arrive. Barcelona have scored 49 league goals already because they've stopped being a team with one plan. They're a team with layers, and that is what turns good football into something opponents dread. This is the part most hype videos skip, but it's the part that actually tells you how dangerous this team really is. Because Barcelona are not flawless. They still live on the edge, and yet they keep winning. Defensively, this Barcelona side is still a high-risk team by design. They push numbers forward, they compress the pitch, they dare opponents to beat them with timing and precision, and when it works, it suffocates teams completely. Barcelona have conceded 20 goals in La Liga so far, which is not elite defensive territory, but context matters. Most of those goals came in the early part of the season, during the period when the press was disjointed and the defensive line had no protection in front of it. Since the tactical correction, the profile has changed. Opponents are still getting shots, but far fewer clear ones. Barcelona are forcing more attempts from wide areas and from outside the box. That's a big shift. It means fewer one-on-ones, fewer tap-ins, fewer moments where defenders are left helpless. And the reason is simple: the team is defending together now. Barcelona still press high, but they don't press blindly. Their PPDA remains among the lowest in La Liga, meaning opponents still have very little time on the ball. But now that pressure comes in waves instead of constant chaos. When the press works, it looks brutal. Teams get pinned, fullbacks get trapped, midfielders receive the ball facing their own goal with no options. Barcelona recover possession high up the pitch and immediately attack again. That's how they keep opponents under pressure for long stretches without even needing to score. But here's the honesty: when the press fails, Barcelona can still be hurt. One mistimed step in the offside trap, one late trigger, one runner who times it perfectly. That risk hasn't disappeared. It's part of Flick's football. The difference now is what happens after the mistake. Earlier in the season, one error meant panic. Now it means recovery. Fullbacks drop quicker, midfielders sprint back, center backs delay instead of diving in, and behind them, the goalkeeper is no longer exposed every time. That change is subtle, but it's massive. Barcelona are also better at killing games with the ball. When they take the lead now, they don't immediately open themselves up, chasing a second goal recklessly. They recycle possession, they slow the tempo, they force the opponent to chase. You can see it clearly in matches like Osasuna. 80% possession, 24 shots, conceded just 3, and very few moments where the game felt out of control. That's not dominance for highlights, that's dominance for points. And here's the scary part for everyone else. Barcelona don't need to be perfect anymore. They can concede a chance and respond. They can survive pressure and reset. They can win games without blowing teams away. That's usually the final step for a title-level team. When you can win comfortably, win ugly, win patient, and win chaotic, all in the same season, you stop being predictable, and unpredictability is the hardest thing to prepare for. So yes, this Barcelona side still has flaws. Yes, elite teams can still expose them in moments. But now, those moments don't define the game. They absorb them, they respond, and most of the time, they overwhelm you again. And that's why this version of Barcelona feels different. Not because they're perfect, but because even when they're uncomfortable, they're still in control.